Thank you for joining the next in our OEM webinar series on the state of integrations in automotive retail. This webinar will share with you the 5 reasons why DSP integrations aren't as fast, as easy as you might think. And we are honored today to have a couple of guests joining us from 2 different OEMs. First of all, Tim Bears from Ford Motor Company. Tim has more than 20 years of experience in automotive, much of which dealing with technology deployments and data strategies with dealers. In his current role, Tim leads the Dealer Connectivity and Data Services division of Ford, which helps inform intelligence about operations, customers, and products. Tim?
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, so I've been with Ford now since 2013, working solely on dealer integrations, starting in the Middle East and now in the U.S. and in charge of the global program. So we've got a lot of experience integrating with the DMSs.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And joining us from Mercedes-Benz is Eberhard Salzman. Eberhard has more than 40 years of experience in automotive across retail, wholesale, and manufacturing. In his current role, Eberhard leads the Retail Integration Program for both Mercedes-Benz recommended DSP since 2000 and more recently since 2014 for more than 100 different DMS globally, serving over 6,000 Mercedes-Benz retailers worldwide and connecting to more than 40 Daimler or Mercedes-Benz backend systems. Eberhard?
Yeah, good afternoon or good morning all to you. As you can see from the picture is from some time where we still had ties. You can see from my picture right now that we have introduced now a new area, which is a more casual one. I'm happy to be in here and share my experience that I could gather in the past with recommended DMS, which is CDK or Keyloop Autoline, and on the other hand also the things I could gather with working together in Motive Retail's area with the other DSPs there where Mercedes is connecting to.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. My name is Natalie Romer. I'm with Motive Retail. I'll be facilitating today's conversation. And for each of the 5 reasons that we'll highlight, I'll share just a little bit of contextual information for each point, and then I'll be handing the microphone over to either Tim or Eberhard to share their personal perspectives. Also joining me today is my colleague Dale Novotniak from our business development team. He'll be helping to answer Q&A and also inserting any comments or perspectives from his personal experiences. So the need to integrate in automotive retail is certainly nothing that's new. There have been lots of data use cases for data to be exchanged between the dealer and the OEM systems. But recent developments such as the connected car and certainly the rapid shift to digital retailing has made integration an even more strategic initiative for most OEMs and has introduced new types of APIs such as online appointment booking and other APIs relative to digital retailing. This is certainly a transformational time, and real-time accurate data exchange is foundational for all digitalization initiatives. And if you've attended any of our previous webinars, you maybe remember Stefan Drexel talking about that it's also not just 2 DMS that you're needing to integrate with. In addition to new DMS entrants in the market, there are hundreds of third-party vendors who offer anything from CRM services to specialized service line software that you may also need to integrate with. So with all of that, let's just dive straight into the 5 reasons. The first one, if you're rolling out new APIs this year, is be prepared to get in line. Most DSPs are asked to integrate to anywhere between 8 and 12 OEM APIs per year. Of course, as you can understand, for any dealer service provider to be relevant in the market, they need to have integrations to most OEMs. And most OEMs have more than one API that they're rolling out in a year. So this is really a lot of requests that they're getting. And of course, not all of the APIs are the same, even if they are for the same business use case. So for example, for SendRO, if a DSP has to do that for 3 different OEMs in a year, each of those are unique implementation efforts with either unique business requirements and sometimes even very different divergent technical requirements, whether it's the data format, the communication protocol, or anything else. And in addition to OEM integrations, the DSPs are also building and maintaining integrations to third-party vendors. If you've ever gone to a DMS's website, you'll notice that the smaller ones have anywhere to 30 to 50 integrations that they maintain, and then the larger DMS have upwards of 1,000 integrations to third parties. And then finally, for a lot of DMS, the teams that they use to implement integrations are the same teams that build out and maintain their products. So by asking them to integrate, you're basically asking them to reallocate resources that they would otherwise be spending on building and maintaining or improving their own products. And then, of course, once you are on the DSP's roadmap for an integration, you do need to budget time for discussing the business model with them, any of the incentives, getting, of course, agreements in place, and all of that takes time. Okay, so with that, let me hand this over to Tim with a quick question. Tim, in 2019 and into 2020, Ford rolled out a major integration worldwide with not just one API, but several APIs. Can you tell us a little bit about how DSP's priorities lined up with Ford priorities? Did a lot of the DSPs sort of raise their hand and get this finished on the timelines that Ford expected? Or what were some of the challenges and conversations that you had to have to get those parties aligned?
Oh, thanks, Natalie. A lot of the things that we did in rolling out our new real-time data bods that are in place now, we had a lot of pushback from the DSPs, especially in Europe, where they have a lot of requirements for dealer buy-in and things of that nature. Um, we had to have a lot of discussions with the DSPs, just showing them the value proposition, explaining why it's good for the dealers, and making sure that we were fully on board with what their development plans look like. Took a lot of, it's not only managing the expectations and getting on the DSP's calendar, but it's also managing the internal Ford resources or the OEM resources to make them understand that this will take a little bit longer than you think, because contrary to some beliefs, the DSPs do not have a warehouse full of coders that are just waiting for the OEMs to bring them work. As you kind of articulated into your bullet points up there, it's very hard, and you have to be very careful in planning those with the DSPs. So to socialize, we kind of try to socialize all of the roadmaps that we have to make sure that they know it's coming. And the more involved we can keep them in our planning, it seems to bear fruit later on. So that's really where we try to focus on when we have new integrations. In order to meet timelines, we need to be ahead of their development cycles. Usually we try to plan within 6 to 9, even 12 months out, letting them know when a new integration is coming. So that's really kind of what we deal with.
Great. Okay. Dale, did any questions come in relative to that point?
No questions.
Okay.
No questions on that. Nope.
Okay, great. All right. Keep going. All right. So the next point is really about communication. And it may seem easy, right? The first thing the DSPs, of course, are going to want to know, or one of the primary things, is what integrations are available. And that seems easy, right? Just put that information out there, publish it somewhere. But really, in our experience with OEMs, a lot of these systems are being made available, or the information about them is being made available from distinct back-end owners within the OEM. And then, of course, that has to be put in a place that DSPs, whether they're part of the program or not, if they're interested in getting, can access easily. And then for every API that is available, they're going to want to know what are the business benefits of the API. Is this something that if the dealer participates in, they're going to get dealer incentives for, or is this something that's going to improve a process within the dealership? Or why should they be doing this? Another thing that they're gonna need to know before they can schedule this work on their roadmap is, what is the implementation scope? Is this a very complicated API that they need to plan resources that will work on the implementation for months, or is it something simpler that they can sort of get done in a couple of weeks? And similar to that, it's important that they know what the timeline expectations are. The last thing that you as the OEM wants, or the DSP for that matter, is for the dealer to find out that there's a new OEM API available, say at the end of Q2, that the DSP really doesn't have time to implement until Q4 of the same year. And then, of course, relative to the benefits that I talked about earlier, it's really important that the information on the dealer use cases is made available. In our experience, when OEMs publish information about an API, oftentimes that's published in the terms of the OEM, how the API works for them, or how they're going to use it. And it's really hard for both the DSP and the dealer to sort of get on board with that initiative unless they understand how it integrates with the sales manager's role or the service manager's role within the store. And then finally, they're going to want to know, what are the requirements to start? Are there security requirements such as SOC 2 compliance? Can any DSP do the integration, or are there certain criteria that the DSP has to meet to be eligible for the integration? So really, there's programmatic things beyond just the API itself that need to be thought through, and that information needs to be available to the DSP. And then finally, the DSP is going to want to know, how can I access the specification? You know, of course, you can throw a 120-page PDF document over the fence for them to read, but just like I talked about, you know, the general information being talked about from the OEM perspective, more often than not, what we see is that the technical specification is really written again from the OEM perspective. So how does this API work for the OEM? A lot of times those specifications are missing the exact dealer use cases. At what point, again, in a service manager's day-to-day job would he or she implement or operate with this API? And how does that look diagrammatically? Another important factor here is the format of the specifications. Even though a PDF is a searchable document, our experience is that people need to interact with these from multiple perspectives. They want to see, maybe one person wants to see the business requirements, another one the technical, and being able to sort of organize that content in a format that's searchable, indexable, that they can link to content within that specification is really helpful. And with that, I've got a question for Eberhard. So Eberhard, I mentioned in your intro that you represent more than 40 backend systems, and I know that you know, you manage your integrations globally through market representatives. For you, what are some of the challenges that Mercedes-Benz has experienced in making integration available to the market?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think first of all, I have to mention to the audience that Mercedes or Daimler has a branded DMS strategy. So with the Keyloop and with the DMS of Autoline. So, and we did have the target to get this implemented as much in as many countries as possible and in as many dealers as possible. So this was managed in the past by my team. Provision of information for that has never then been, and for other DSPs has never been, a main focus topic for quite a period. Only once around 2014 it was, I would say, realized that you can't implement this fully globally. Then the topic, what do we do with the other DSPs, with the other dealers that do not want to follow the strategy? And then also Motive Retail setting up these integration facilities came into the place. So I think this is the first. It took some time until Daimler or Mercedes had a buy-in in this. The second thing was that also for the backend system owners, the integration with the DSPs is them not priority number one. So they have other things to do, and for them it's sometimes more an add-on that they have to support. The third is that we have some decentralized organizations with the markets, and they sometimes do have their own priorities due to their market specifics, whether they have quite homogeneous dealer networks or rather not homogeneous dealer networks. So, and some markets do have an own retail, a high share of an own retail where the recommended DMS implemented. So they all watch on these things that we provide them from the headquarter point of view with some different views. And then looking globally, we still have to consider that we have some things to consider in terms of a block extension that is applicable for some markets in Europe, but not, for example, like markets in Asia. So in order to sum up this, I would say the main challenge was for making these things available is managing the different targets and priorities of the specific groups, and also handling the conflicts of targets and priorities not fitting together. This would be my summary as of my experience as of now.
Thank you, Eberhard. Any questions regarding anything that I shared or Eberhard shared on this topic before we move on?
There was a question that came in. It was directed towards Tim, and the question is around standards. So the question is, for Ford, did Ford do a point-to-point integration with each DSP, or did they use a global framework like STAR for integrating with each DSP?
That's a good question, actually. From From a perspective of making things available, Ford is my group, Dealer Connectivity and Data Services, is about creating reusable services. So we create one global specification. We do base it off the STAR standard, and then we build an endpoint that all of the DSPs can code to. So that way, we don't have to manage point to point each DSP. In their connectivity, we actually have them code to come and pull and get data from us, or send to a central point, depending on whether it's a write to or a write back.
Yeah. And Tim, I guess just an extension to that. I mean, how much deviation from STAR did Ford have to handle, and if any at all? And was there challenges from market to market with that?
There were some challenges. Believe it or not, in a lot of the countries that we've been working in, we're in 52 countries globally, and across, I believe it's 120 DSPs that we're integrated with. They are familiar with the STAR standard globally. It's becoming more and more prevalent as other OEs are coming up with integrations as well that are based off of STAR. So, what was the second part of that question? I'm sorry.
No, I guess from market to market, was there differences in what STAR handles that you had to deviate from the standard completely to handle other markets?
There weren't any. The biggest problems that we are facing is that a lot of our integrations are now going to JSON, which is not 100% developed within STAR. So while we are keeping to the STAR principles, we're kind of blazing a path that is that may be, down the line we might have to make some changes to, depending on which way STAR goes.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, so the third point is really about certification, right? You've gotten on the roadmap, you've made the information available. Seems like everybody can just roll up their sleeves and get started, but of course, the integration can't just happen. It has to be right. It has to be good. So the first bullet, I realize there's one word here, testing, but this is probably the meatiest thing of the entire process. A lot of the OEMs that we've worked with have certainly stood up test environments. Maybe you call it something different, a stage environment or an integration or a pre-production environment. But a lot of times these are simply just copies of the production environment. And while that's good, one thing it's not that I want to distinguish it from is it's not a test system, meaning a very deliberately designed holistic system that guides your integrating partners through a process that helps them understand how their end users will interact with your API, be able to test all of those scenarios, get feedback on that testing, and also at the same time validate that the information that they're sending through to your systems and in some cases getting back is accurate. And let me just explain by a couple of sub bullets here what I mean by those. So first of all, the system needs to have a test regimen, right? You can't just stand up a test environment and hope that whatever random requests or posts that your integrating partners do sort of test the full functionality of the intent of the API. A lot of times what we've seen is OEMs really kind of just think again about, how can they break the system, and they're not necessarily thinking about all of the ways that end users will interact with that API. And so you really need to think through what are the right tests, whether that's unit tests or full round trip test cases, if you will, that they need to perform to assure you and them that they've coded to this correctly. Another thing that's really important is that you provide some type of a testing toolkit to them, right? So it's not just the environment, but provide them ways that they know how to access, again, small unit tests, round trip tests. They get feedback and coaching back. So not just error messages, but information that helps them understand, if they've made a mistake or if something's not within the technical or business requirement, that they can actually go and fix that and correct that. And of course, that they have access to those tools 24/7. So there's hopefully some automation built in there that's not, 100% reliant on a support team. Then, of course, there's evaluating and tracking the results, right? To at some point award a certification, you have to be able to know how people are doing on the tests. Are they passing and failing them, and how are they progressing against all of the collective tests that you've set out as criteria? And then, of course, there's the test data. Just like the environment, you can't just copy production data and dump it into a test environment that's typically full of PII that's not secure for you or for them to be using. And so you've got to have a system for generating and maintaining test data that makes sense to them and that's actually usable within their systems to perform all the tests that they need for their end users. And then, of course, there's staffing to support this, right? Maybe you've worked with outside contractors or IT teams to build out these APIs. You've got to also have staff that can support your partners as they're integrating. So regardless of how well the specification is written, they're going to have technical questions. They're going to have questions about the process. And making sure that you have staff that have the subject matter expertise on that, and potentially can also span multiple APIs that you're rolling out is really critical. And then lastly, there's certification project management, right? So I already talked about tracking test results, but you and your stakeholders, so the back-end owners, market representatives, and others within your organization are going to want to know of the target DSPs, who all has signed up, where are they in the process, and when do we anticipate that they'll finish certification? So you've got to have a means that you or your stakeholders can sort of see in one place where all that information is. And I have questions. This is a really meaty topic, so I have questions for both Ford and Mercedes-Benz here. So Tim, starting with you, in more than a decade in your role with DCDS, you've probably seen a lot of API rollouts with various staffing models. Can you talk to us about some of the challenges around maintaining subject matter expertise, and then also, supporting the ebb and flow of when you have lots of integrations, and then if there were lulls where there were maybe fewer, how do you maintain staff that both have that expertise and your partners sort of know who they go to?
Yeah, so from an IT perspective in getting testing and things done, our IT staff, we have pretty good tenure within the staff, but certainly the folks that would support certification they do turn over quite a bit. So one of the things that we really focus on is documentation of the processes, having that available to them to be able to go to. Obviously, we work tightly with Motive Retail in general, but to have all that documented in one place, so that regardless of who that person is that steps into the role from our IT staff, that they know exactly where they can go to get everything, and it's all in one place. That is extremely important to the process.
So Tim, you're saying in addition to making the information available in one place for your partners, you at Ford, your teams at Ford use Motive Retail for document management?
That's it. That's exactly correct. So, depending on it helps us to have it available and make it available in one single place. So whether it's a business owner or whether it's an IT owner from a Ford perspective, we're able to get that information in their hands. And it's a centralized place where they can go get everything.
And then I have a question for Eberhard as well. So regarding standing up test environments and test data for that matter, how does that work at Mercedes-Benz? Again, you've got 40 different back-end owners. Are they all sort of standing up their own environments? And how do you make that information, to the point I was making, not only available to the end users, but also establishing some of those other test system elements that I talked about, test regimens and dealer use cases, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so a clear statement is each of the backend system owner is operating his test environment against his own application. And so we have set up then also with using Motive Retail the facility that we are communicating this to all our DSPs when these test systems are planned down, so not available, or in the other way around, when they should be available. So this has been implemented with a so-called integrated release management calendar that we share, so that the DSPs at least know when the systems can be used or not, if there is some direct communication necessary. So there is also, I think, if you discuss these test environments, then of course the topic is coming to test data consistencies across systems. So I would also be quite honest and say, this is something where we still have some challenges also within our organization to get these things better harmonized, because everybody's looking onto his own topic that this is being optimized, but with the organizational change that we have taken now some months ago, where we combine the teams for the integration with other DSPs and with the recommended DMS, we also can use the subject matter experts and also the experience we do have here in order to interact with Motive Retail externally and on the other side also internally with the backend system owner.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Eberhard, one more question on this topic regarding certification project management. Again, lots of stakeholders to manage at Mercedes-Benz. How does your team and how do you keep all of those stakeholders apprised of not just testing status, but the entire program and where your partners are in certification relative to the APIs?
Yeah, so with the Motive Integrator platform, I think this is a perfect database where everybody can see the last statuses. But of course, this is something like a self-service where the stakeholders and also our market organizations would have to access these things. And we have recognized that we need to improve in such a matter. And so this means we have also since the spring this year set up a more regular communication to all the backend system owners and also the markets in order to make a snapshot every month and provide them, I would say, actively with an overview. So this is for the phases when the onboarding of a project already has been completed and it's in a phase where the DSP can develop against. And in this phase of the onboarding, the backend system owner, of course, is a part of the project team in order to get all the specifications then transferred into the language that Motive Retail understands and that is being published on the platform. So there they are fully involved in the project. And when it comes then to the next phases until they are involved again with a phase 2 or the integration test, then we have now implemented, as I said, a process to actively inform them with a snapshot of the Motive Integrator platform.
Okay, thank you, Eberhard. Dale, did any questions come in on any of that? I know there was a lot of content there.
Yeah, great content around the certification and the benefits here on and what's all involved with the testing and the environments and the staffing. But I think this question that just came in kind of segues back to the previous topic that we were on with relation to STAR. So this is from an anonymous attendee, but basically this attendee is asking, STAR seems to have some limited BODs around customer experience and marketing, especially how things are progressing in the industry. So the question is for both Eberhard and for Tim. How did Ford and Mercedes manage to handle the ever-growing use cases if STAR does not have the BODs to support certain use cases for certain business objects happening in the dealerships? So I'll turn it to Tim first to answer that, because I know that there's been some experience in the past where I think Ford has probably run up against this, and I'm sure Daimler has as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of along the same lines of the last question that came out, and I'm starting to see the kind of the linkage between the two. Yeah, STAR does have some limitations in what their offerings are. Certainly, from an OE perspective, we can't sit and wait for STAR to come up with a BOD around it. So again, we try to take elements from what STAR has available in other areas and apply those principles and elements back to something that we would create that, yeah, I guess it would be considered customized. But however, we take great care to make sure that we're following the STAR. When I say STAR principles, like the structures and the same naming and things of that nature, to make sure that we're still going in that direction. Great.
And then Eberhard, can you expand on your guys' approach at Mercedes with BODs in general and your APIs in general? That'd be excellent as well.
Yeah, so I would first state on this that using a STAR standard we are not so strong within Mercedes. So sometimes we think we need to proceed our own way, and this is what our backend system owners do. And I would say forcing them to comply to a standard is sometimes difficult. The second thing is that within Mercedes, we are midst in a transformation to APIs. So we have just now the first API projects that we have in implementation. The previous integrations that we did have that also complied to real-time interfaces were via a bespoke development of a data server communication that is now planned to be sundowned over the next couple of years. And so the API technology and the API integration gets more traction right now. And we also learn that besides the just pure technical things, there's a lot of stuff organizational wise to be done with API integrations. Where the whole organization still is learning on, where the markets are learning on, even if we, and when we provided training sessions on them, this is, I would say, still a journey where the entire organization from us is within the next 2 years, I would say.
Excellent, excellent. I do have another question. If we can take that, that'd be great. So there's a question from an anonymous attendee. So how does Ford manage prioritization of business requirements versus a development pipeline until the whole integration platform is developed on the Ford side? So the question really is around, does Ford do any piloting in a certain region, especially with integrating to 100+ DSPs? And how long did it typically take to reach each of those milestones?
Yeah, so from a prioritization of business requirements, that's done at a very high level. Our group essentially is governed by all of the upper level management business owners. So at the beginning of the year, the prioritization is set for different initiatives that need to get done. So at that point, we do have a POC that we will do with depending on the market, we will choose a DSP that we can work with to pilot or to do a POC on. And then at that time, we'll be developing in parallel. And then once we have a spec ready, then we will go to the broader market. Typically, the business owners that we work with to develop these solutions in market, they have specific target areas that they're looking to go to, and then it will be brought to a global team that will take care of it. So we really do try to target specific areas like North America, or if it's something in some of our emerging markets, then we'll go to an emerging market with a POC. But not every single specification out there is meant to be global, right? Sometimes we have to solve problems that are related to just a certain area. And they might have different vendors, right? So it might be a different vendor that has to come in and work with the DMSs in market. So I guess the short answer is it kind of depends. But the long-term answer is that for global, we do roll out market by market based on the business need and where their plans are. So it's really specific to what that program is and what the use cases are.
Okay, great. Any other questions or commentary? All right, we'll keep going then. Okay, great. So once all of your DSP partners are certified, then you'll have to, of course, activate your stores. And for that, there's a lot of sort of busy work and organizational things that you need to consider. So first of all, of course, you need to have a mechanism or system to track which dealers are associated with DSPs. And although dealers don't switch DMS every year, it's a big effort. It does happen, it's dynamic, so you need to be able to track that. And then, of course, you need to track the DSPs against their certification status, right? If service is being requested for an API, did they actually complete the certification and are they eligible for it? And it's not just the production environment they need access to. Even if they finish certification for regression testing and other purposes, they need access to tests and stage and pre-production environments. And then, of course, a very important consideration that's been around forever is credential management and the security that goes around with that, right? You need to have a secure means to be able to share credentials, to be able to ensure that, if your organization requires that those are rotated on a regular basis, that you can do that in a safe and secure manner. And this last point, I don't want to call out anybody here on the call today, but we're always surprised when we speak to OEMs about how many of you are managing this process over email. Requests are coming in via email, they're being routed internally for various approvals, and credentials and other information is being sent back out over email. And while that may work in terms of just moving things around, it's certainly very difficult to get a centralized, organized view of everything, who all is active for a particular service, for what period of time, how much data is transacting over those systems, what requests are potentially in conflict, meaning did a DMS request service for a store that's already active under another store? What's the status of that resolution? So really, there's a lot of things that if not managed well, not only is burdensome for you internally, but it also opens you up to a lot of risk. And so with that question, Tim, I'll pivot to you. Given the number of dealers that Ford has globally, how do you manage dealer activation? What have some of the challenges been in the past, and what is Ford doing to manage that better going forward?
The first thing I have to say is guilty. We are one of the ones that have in place a very manual process to change dealers globally from one DSP to the other, or manage certificates and manage OAuth to client IDs and secrets. We have felt that pain. It is a logistical nightmare to administer, and we are taking steps to rectify that now, to automate it and put it in the DSP's hands to tell us when they are putting on a new dealer, or tell us when they automate the process of being able to get their own client ID and secret from the Ford DSP portal, where all the DSPs go to in order to facilitate that process. So that should be launching here in the next couple of months. From an automation standpoint, from a dealer management standpoint, that's something that we're launching in the next couple of weeks. So we're excited for that. It's definitely something that we have one full-time head that actually administers that now. So the elimination of that head, not to eliminate the position, but to let that person focus on actually developing and moving forward and speeding other integrations, is something that we're really excited about.
Congratulations. All right. Dale, any questions, or Ewout, anything else you want to add there?
No, I would say nothing to add, unless to say, yes, managing these credentials is something that is taking traction also. And I think we will run in the same issues than the colleague of Ford did have. Yeah, if the volume is coming, then you need to automate. But first, I would say, need to have the manual process under control before you automate. So this would be our priority.
All right, so that brings us to our last consideration, which is continual integrity. And what do I mean by that? So when certification is awarded, so when they validate that the API integration is good, that happens at a point in time, at the culmination of the integrating partner completing all the tests and passing all of them. But of course, as all of us know who work in software, systems are dynamic, right? So whether it's a major release, or if it's just a few bug fixes or a small feature rollout, all of those changes have the potential to break certification, or certainly alter minor things that can manifest in either bad data or broken processes. So you, even beyond certification, you need to have a process or something in place to be able to ensure that despite those changes that happen, that the API integration remains good. One way to do that, of course, and some of you may be doing this today, is some type of continuous certification or monitored regression testing, where at intervals in time, you're asking your partners to either repass certain tests or all tests, or doing some type of validation that things are still within the specification. Another option or consideration is real-time inbound data validation, meaning that you have validation engines built into your APIs that can check the data at the point of entry, if you will, to make sure that it's correct. The alternative, of course, and I think this is probably what's happening in reality, is when the data is first being analyzed, or when warranty claims are being processed, it's there that mistakes or anomalies are being caught. So inbound data validation really moves that forward at the point of entry to make sure that things are coming in correctly. And for this, I'm just going to pose one general question to both of you, and whoever wants to take it first is fine. But first of all, do you see this problem in reality in your world, and how do you deal with it today?
Data integrity is extremely important, and a lot of, from the integration standpoint, we do leave once a DSP is certified for their particular system on an integration, we do leave the tools open for them to go back as they make changes to their system to do regression testing. It's not mandated at Ford. However, we do checks on the data in real time as it comes in for some of the basic things. But in reality, that most of the issues that we encounter that are painful are the dealer input issues, right? So those are the things that we can't control. And that's one of the things that we try to drive out with the way we design our APIs, is to eliminate as much of the noise from dealer input that we can, conceding that we're not going to be able to root it all out.
Yeah, I would comment on this. I would say in the following way. I think we don't have a process in place that is doing, I would say, a recertification. So once certified, then certification is fine. But I think we are watching quite closely onto the purpose. If there are data being sent to us as the OEM, then the backend system owner is quite closely watching whether the data quality is good for him. And if not, then he will find his way via our market organization to the respective dealer. And then in case also the DSP needs to be contacted in order to be part of the solution of any kind of issue. So if the way is the other way around, so that the dealer is the recipient of the data, then I would say it's up to the dealer to find out whether the data is maybe not as good as he would want to have this. And then he's contacting also via his market organization, then the data provider on this topic. So we are just acting, I would say, as a facilitator. And so we can't act as, I would say, a data controller in such a working model.
Okay, thank you both. Dale, any questions on this topic?
Yeah, this is a good one. I think we could all contribute to this in one way. But how is inbound data testing different for XML, which can rely on schema, versus a custom API that necessarily does not have a schema tied to it?
I would say this is no good question for me. I'm not such a detailed technical expert to comment on this. I only can say it in the following way. We have a process implemented with a reference implementation. So all the things we do, we offer to various DMSs around the globe. We just first try to develop and implement with a recommended DMS, and also the pitfalls that we should run in, we find out with our recommended DMS, and should then be, I would say, already on the solving path if we offer this to other ones.
Yes, and so from our perspective, because again, we deal with OEMs that have custom, we deal with OEMs that have star, and just a schema behind their APIs. But I mean, it is a great question because the schema only goes so far, and it is at a very basic level, right? Is it required? Is it not required? Field lengths, etc. There's a lot more work when you stand up a custom bod that you guys will have to worry about building into your gateways and into your backends to do that data validation. But what we do at Motiv, when we stand up these data specifications, especially on behalf of Daimler and Ford, we're not only worried about the technical schema roles, right? We are also building in those business roles and the logic that is supporting the workflow for each API, and that service can be extended into a production environment, right? The validation API, call it, right, that Motiv is putting in place during the certification testing throughout the process is enforcing all this. So at the testing level, each DSP is being really exercised to make sure that they understand the complete customization of the bots or just the schema in general, right? So we're building all that into the spec, which can then be expanded into a production environment pending the OEM wants to go that direction and let us handle it on your behalf if you guys do not want to. So hopefully that answers that question. If not, we can definitely come back to that. If somebody wanted to reach out to us directly, we would be happy to answer that more in depth.
Yeah,
Um,
Dale, you bring up
sure.
a good point. You do bring up a good point. I mean, from a Ford perspective, typically what we're doing is a two-pronged test approach. So we do system testing as a phase one, and then we do a dealer pilot, whereby when we call system testing, it's very generic with to make sure that all the fields are coming over with very vanilla data that's given to them. We know exactly
Right.
what should be coming over in phase one, and then once they get through phase one, we do go to phase two, which is dealer pilot, where we turn on two pilots with live data coming from the dealers that are in separate groups, that are able to have two separate operations, so they're not from the same pool. So we can see exactly whether they've coded to how those dealers are operating to get out of certification, or whether they've coded to the spec. So that really kind of boils it down. So that's how we kind of monitor that stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I think schema testing only goes so far. You have to have that second level, right, of business rule testing, which I think you guys accomplish in the phase two piece of that.
Let me just wrap this up with a couple of conclusionary points. So despite what may seem like a lot of daunting things that you have to deal with, you certainly heard from both Eberhard and from Tim that they've found successful ways of dealing with most of these challenges. And we've certainly talked to a lot of other OEMs that have found ways to deal with all of these issues. And of course, Motive Retail can help, right? We know a lot of you as customers, and certainly a lot of you as friends. We don't sell systems to dealers. We specialize only in integration. It's our lifeblood. It's what our platform, our people do. And so we're really 100% focused on ways to make this faster, better, and easier for all parties involved, both the OEMs, the DSPs, and for that matter, the third parties that are integrating to the DMS systems. So let me just talk a little bit about a couple of ways that we do that. A lot of you are familiar with our flagship product, Motive Integrator Certify. That's an end-to-end solution that does everything from transforming and publishing your specification in an easy-to-use, searchable online format, to developing that test system with the test regiment, writing out test cases, giving the integrating partners all the tools that they need 24/7 and the feedback mechanism so they can develop faster and get this done faster and better. And of course, we wrap that in all the project management tools so that the stakeholders, both on your side and on the subscribing side, have what they need to know where they are in the process and what they need to do next to get this done. But regardless of how much that helps or how tight we can make the process of partners certifying to proprietary APIs or your specific varying APIs, one problem that still persists is that publishers are asking subscribers, so OEMs are asking DSPs to integrate multiple times to otherwise similar APIs, which is why we built out Motive Integrator Exchange. Amongst other services, it introduces an industry standard API. So what I mean by that is, for example, for SendRO, we take multiple unique backend systems, whether they're STAR or proprietary, XML, JSON, or any other format, and transform that to one industry standard so that DSPs or integrating parties can implement an integration once and benefit to access from multiple backend systems. Sounds great for them. What do you get out of it? Remember that first step, get in line, that basically moves you right to the front of the line. So instead of asking your partners, to do the 8th or 9th or 12th integration this year, they've only got 1 or 2 that they've got to do. So it really accelerates things for you. It also optimizes things for you. We build those out, not just as like the common denominator of APIs, but really optimize those. So a lot of times, when publishers add a new field, instead of having to have their partners recertify, that's already built into the design of the standardized API. And then in addition to that, subscribers who subscribe to Motive Integrator Exchange also benefit from things like inbound data validation and authorization services. And then finally, we have Motive Integrator Activate. That's an online platform that automates and organizes the dealer activation process. So it's got an online form for requesting access, and basically presents a portal to both publishers and subscribers where at just a glance, they can see all of the requests for both activation, deactivation, as well as pending or in conflict requests, and can globally sort of see who's active for what services, what are the volumes that transact over those activations, et cetera. So we can help you in all of those ways, not to mention our team of subject matter experts that help in API design and building the program rollouts. So I'll get off my platform there. Anything else before we go to open Q&A that Tim or Eberhard that you thought of that you want to add in before we go to Q&A?
No, I think you've said it well.
Okay.
And I think I have a question that's been asked that will probe, some feedback from Eberhard and Tim. So this attendee would like to know, what have been important learnings that each of you have gained while implementing the integration platform, which I'm assuming that is our platform, Motive Integrator Certified, and any mistakes that could have been avoided, if any, what were they?
I mean, from an overall perspective, I think one of the key learnings that we've had in recent years, and it's evolved at Ford, is just having that central point of contact with the DSPs that can help organize what they need to work on. In the past, one of the big issues at Ford was that independent business owners were going to DSPs, asking for things and asking for integrations, and they would come to our group and say, "We don't know what to work on. We're open to working on it, but we have no idea what takes priority." So what we learned over time was to have that central list, if you will, that's governed by the Ford management that is able to say, here's the roadmap and here's what takes priority. The integration platform, that certainly enables the work. However, organizing yourself from a company standpoint is going to pay dividends in the end, because they'll be able to focus on what is going to deliver to your dealers.
I would like to add, having such a platform, I think, is really good, because you have one standardized process that everybody has to follow. With that, you also can have an awareness internally that not everybody can, I would say, play his own game. Yeah? So you have some kind of standards, and they are proven to work. The experience that Motive Retail can get into the process by knowing other OEMs topics, I think, is also of good value, and they can overcome the fact that we as an OEM have our own language, whereas Motive Retail talks the language of the DSPs, and this then can come together much better. But I would also comment on what the colleague from Ford was saying. You need to organize yourself as the OEM and your own processes on top of that. So thinking that Motive Retail is, I would say, solving all your things just alone and you don't have to do anything, I would say this would be a misunderstanding. Yeah? So both things to align and comply them together and combine them together. This is, I would say, the success story that you can get out of this. And I think also, if some things are related to cost that you have to invest, these are discussions that we sometimes do have either with DSPs or with backend system owners, and we come back to them and saying in such a way. So for the backend system owners, it keeps their back free. They can concentrate on other things than dealing with each of the DSPs. And for the DSPs, this is also then, I would say, getting them some value, that they have unlimited access to the documentations, that there are streamlined testing facilities, that there is a clear tracking of the things, and of course that there is support that Motive Retail brings to the DSP in case of issues and questions that the OEM would not want to bring in such an extent. And so there's a clear value description why you outsource something, and why then there's also, I would say, a price behind the service.
Great. Hey, I want to be respectful to everybody's time. We are up against the hour. There are a few other questions. We will follow up with you directly on those. And if necessary, get feedback from Eberhard and Tim to share with you as well. But first and foremost, I want to thank Eberhard Salzman again and Tim Bears. Your insights are extremely valuable to everyone else. And to all of the attendees, thank you for taking an hour of your day today to hear this great information.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot.